Every guide for running AI at home tells you to download the quantized version of the model. They almost never tell you what that word means or what you give up to get it. So you end up picking a file with a cryptic label like Q4 or Q5 or Q8, and you have no idea if you just made a smart choice or quietly wrecked your model's quality. I run quantized models on a 7-year-old gaming card every day, and I want to clear this up properly. By the end, you will know exactly what those numbers mean, what you lose, and how to pick the right one for your card and your task. Let me start with the plain version of what quantization is. A language model is a giant pile of numbers called weights. Those weights normally get stored at high precision, 16 bits per number, sometimes 32. That precision takes a lot of memory. Quantization is the process of squeezing those numbers down to fewer bits each. 4 bits, 5 bits, 8 bits. You are trading away some of the exactness of each weight in return for a model that takes far less memory and runs faster. That is the whole idea in one sentence. Everything else is just detail about how aggressively you squeeze. Here is why this matters so much for running models at home. The single biggest limit on a home GPU is VRAM, the memory on the graphics card itself. My old card has 11 gigabytes. A full precision 7 billion parameter model wants something like 14 gigabytes just for the weights, and that does not even fit. Quantize that same model down to 4 bits per weight and it shrinks to around 4 gigabytes. Suddenly it fits with room to spare for the rest of the work the model needs to do. Quantization is the thing that takes a model from impossible on your hardware to comfortable on your hardware. That is not a small optimization. It is the difference between running it at all and not running it. Now let me decode the labels, because this is where people get lost. When you see Q4, that roughly means 4 bits per weight. Q5 means about 5 bits. Q8 means about 8 bits. Higher number, more bits, more precision kept. Bigger file, more VRAM needed. Lower number, fewer bits, smaller file, less VRAM, but more of the original information thrown away. You will also see extra letters after the number, things like K and M and S. Those describe the specific method used to do the squeezing and how it handles different parts of the model. You do not need to memorize all of them. The headline number is the part that drives the trade-off, and that is what I want you to focus on. So what do you actually lose at each level? Let me give you the honest version from real use, not theory. At 8 bits, Q8, the quality loss is so small that in normal use you will not notice it. The model behaves almost exactly like the full precision version. The catch is that Q8 is the biggest of the quantized options, so it saves you the least VRAM. At 5 bits, Q5, you are in a really good middle ground. The loss is small, noticeable only on hard tasks if you go looking for it, and you save a meaningful chunk of memory. At 4 bits, Q4, you save the most memory. The model fits on the smallest cards, but the quality loss starts to become real. It shows up first in the places you would expect. Let me be specific about where that Q4 loss shows up, because vague warnings are useless. The model gets a little more likely to make small factual slips. It handles long, complex instructions slightly less reliably. On tasks that need careful step-by-step reasoning, like math or tricky logic, it stumbles a bit more often than the higher precision versions. For casual chat, summarizing an article, rewriting a paragraph, answering a straightforward question, you will struggle to tell Q4 apart from Q8. The loss is concentrated in the hard cases, not the easy ones. So the real question is never just which quant is best. It is which quant is best for the specific work you are doing. There is a pattern here that surprised me when I first understood it, and it changes how you should choose. A bigger model at a lower quant usually beats a smaller model at a higher quant. Let me say that again because it matters. If you have to choose between a 13 billion parameter model squeezed to 4 bits or a 7 billion parameter model kept at 8 bits, and they take roughly the same VRAM, the bigger model at the lower quant is usually the smarter pick. The extra parameters carry more capability than the extra precision does. So when you are working out what to run, do not just max out the quant on a small model. Consider stepping up to a larger model at a more aggressive quant instead. That is often where the real quality lives. Let me put some actual numbers on the VRAM side so you can plan. A 7 billion parameter model at 4 bits lands around 4 to 5 gigabytes. The same model at 8 bits is closer to 8 gigabytes. A 13 billion model at 4 bits is roughly 8 gigabytes, and at 8 bits, it pushes past 13. A really big model, the kind with tens of billions of parameters, only becomes possible on consumer hardware at all because of aggressive quantization. Those rough numbers are how you reverse engineer what fits. Take your card's VRAM, subtract a couple of gigabytes for overhead and working memory, and what is left tells you which model and quant combinations you can actually load. I want to flag a real cost that people skip past. Quantization does not just affect quality, it can affect speed, and not always the way you expect. Lower precision weights mean less data moving around, which can make the model faster. But some quantization methods need extra work to unpack those squeezed numbers back into something the GPU can compute with. And that unpacking costs time. On my card, the well-supported 4 and 5-bit methods run fast and clean. Some of the more exotic formats run slower than their file size would suggest. So when you try a new quant, do not just check that it fits. Check how many tokens per second you actually get, because two files the same size can run at very different speeds. Let me talk about how you actually get these files, because the workflow matters. Most people run quantized models through a tool like Ollama, which handles the download and the quant choice for you behind a simple name. That is fine, and it is where I would start anyone. But once you want control, you go to where the community publishes these quantized files directly, and you pick the exact quant yourself. You will see a whole menu of options for a single model, every quant level laid out with its file size. That file size is your VRAM preview. If the file is bigger than the free space on your card, it will not run well, and you should step down a level. It is a surprisingly honest signal once you know to read it. Let me clear up a confusion that costs people quality. The extra letters you see on these files. After the bit number, you will often see a K and then an S, M, or L. Those refer to a smarter quantization method that does not squeeze every part of the model equally. It keeps the most important parts at higher precision and squeezes the less important parts harder. The S, M, and L are roughly small, medium, and large variants of that approach, trading a little more size for a little more quality. The practical takeaway is simple. When you have the choice, the K methods are usually better than the older plain ones at the same bit level, because they spend their precision where it matters most. So if you see a 4-bit file with the K label and one without, reach for the K1. Let me give you a feel for the actual quality numbers, because people want something concrete rather than my vibes. When researchers measure how much a model degrades under quantization, the pattern is consistent. Going from full precision down to 8 bits costs you almost nothing, a fraction of a percent on most measures, genuinely negligible. Going to 5 bits costs a small but real amount, usually low single digits of percentage on hard tasks. Going to 4 bits costs a bit more, and below 4 bits the loss starts climbing steeply. That is why 4 bits is the popular floor. It is the point where you have squeezed most of the memory out while the quality is still clearly acceptable. Push below 4 and you fall off the edge fast, which is why those 2 and 3-bit files exist but should be a last resort. Let me be honest about an exception, because blanket rules mislead. Very small models suffer more from aggressive quantization than large ones do. A tiny model has less redundancy to spare, so squeezing it hurts proportionally more. A huge model has so much capacity that even heavy quantization barely dents it. So the 4-bit floor is a good rule for mid-sized models, but for a very small model you might want to stay at 5 or even 8 bits to keep it usable. And for a very large model, you can often go more aggressive than you would expect and still get great results. The size of the model changes how much quantization it can tolerate. Keep that in mind when you are choosing. One practical workflow tip that saves real time. When you download a quant, do not just trust that it loaded. Actually run a couple of your real tasks and watch both the quality and the speed. I have had files that loaded fine but ran strangely slow because the specific format was poorly supported by my tools. I have had others that loaded but produced subtly worse output than expected because I had grabbed a more aggressive quant than I meant to. A 2-minute check right after downloading catches both problems before you build anything on top of a bad choice. Treat the first few runs as a quick acceptance test, not as production. Here is the decision rule I actually use stripped down. If the model fits comfortably at 8 bits and I still have room for the rest of the work, I run 8 bits and stop thinking about it. If 8 bits is too tight, I drop to 5 bits, which is my default workhorse, because the quality loss is small and the memory savings are real. I only go to 4 bits when I need to fit a bigger model than would otherwise be possible, and I accept that the hard tasks will get a little weaker. And for anything where correctness really matters, careful reasoning, code, precise instructions, I lean toward higher precision, or a bigger model, not the most aggressive squeeze. Match the quant to the job. The one honest warning so you do not get burned. Do not benchmark a quant by asking it one question and judging the answer. Quantization loss is statistical. It shows up as a slightly higher rate of small mistakes across many runs, not as one obviously broken response. So a single good answer does not prove the quant is fine, and a single bad answer does not prove it is broken. If you really want to know whether a quant level is good enough for your work, run your actual tests through it a couple of dozen times and watch for the pattern of small slips. That is the only test that tells you the truth about whether you squeeze too far. Let me zoom out to the thing that took me a while to accept. Quantization is not a compromise you are forced into because you are too cheap for better hardware. It is a genuinely good engineering trade that makes local AI practical for normal people. The people running these models on data center cards also use quantization, because the speed and memory wins are worth it even when you can afford not to. So do not treat the quantized model as the budget version you settle for. Treat it as the sensible default that happens to also be the only thing that fits on your card. Understanding the levels just lets you pick the right point on that trade instead of guessing. So to pull it together, the number in the quant label is bits per weight, and it drives the whole trade-off. 8 bits is nearly lossless and biggest. 5 bits is the smart middle. 4 bits saves the most memory and costs you on the hard tasks. A bigger model at a lower quant often beats a smaller model at a higher quant for the same memory. Check speed, not just file size, and benchmark with your real work over many runs, not one lucky question. Get those few things right, and you will stop guessing at cryptic labels and start choosing on purpose. This is the kind of thing I dig into on this channel. Real working systems with honest trade-offs. The details that the quick start guides skip. If that is your thing, subscribe and follow along. I pull apart one of these every week. Subscribe for more AI builds.